All right. So have you ever set this goal for yourself? You're super pumped about it. You're making progress. And then bam, suddenly you're back to square one. It's like this frustrating roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
I think we've all been there at some point, right? Whether it's career goals, fitness journeys, you name it. It's so easy to fall into that trap.
It really is.
And that's actually what we're diving into today, how to ditch those yo-yo results and finally crack the code of consistent achievement. We're checking out this awesome guide from GlobalSpread Academy on breaking free from that cycle.
I'm familiar with that one. It's got some great stuff.
And of course, we have our expert here to help us break it all down.
Happy to be here.
So something that really resonated with me from the guide was this quote by B. Simone, and it goes, "It's not about the results, it's about the actions and habits that will bring us the results." And it's so true, right? We get so fixated on that, when I achieve X, then I'll be happy. But what if the real key is changing our entire approach? Focusing on the process instead of just the end goal.
Yeah, that's a really powerful point. It's so easy to get caught up in that finish line that we completely miss out on, like the journey itself, right? And that's usually how we end up in that yo-yo cycle.
It's true. It's almost like we put so much pressure on ourselves to reach that one specific goal. And then once we hit it, it's like, okay, so what now?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That feeling of accomplishment can disappear surprisingly fast. And if you don't have that target anymore, it's easy to just slip back into those old habits, those old routines. That's why understanding the process is so important. It's about building a system you can actually sustain, not just chasing after this one single outcome.
So how do we break free from that results-obsessed mindset and build that sustainable system? The guide keeps coming back to these three core things: discipline, consistency, and focus. And I don't know about you, but I'm ready to unpack those.
Me too. And I think it's important, these aren't just buzzwords, these are the actual tools that we can use to build that system. So let's kick things off with discipline. We tend to think of it as this superhuman willpower, like you had to be the superhero to be disciplined. But it's more about showing up even when every fiber of your being is telling you to just stay in bed. Those mornings where just thinking about your to-do list makes you want to crawl back under the covers.
Tell me about it. Some days, even making coffee feels like a monumental effort.
Exactly. And that's where consistency comes into play. I mean, we've all heard it a million times. Rome wasn't built in a day, right? It's those small but consistent actions that we take day after day after day that actually lead to those bigger long-term changes.
Yeah, it's like building muscle, right? You don't just walk into the gym once a month and suddenly you're ripped. It's about showing up for those workouts consistently, even the ones where you feel like you're just going through the motions. Those are the ones that get you the results in the long run.
You got it. And we can't forget about focus. Think of it like this. Every time we let ourselves get sidetracked, whether it's that social media black hole or, some shiny new thing that pops up, it's like taking a detour on your climb to the top of the mountain.
And in this day and age, those detours are absolutely everywhere.
Well, they really are. It's so easy to get distracted. And each one of those detours, they might seem fun in the moment, but they're taking us further and further away from what we're actually trying to achieve.
It's like we're trying to climb a mountain, run a marathon, and write a novel all at the same time. It's no wonder we end up feeling burnt out and losing sight of what we were working towards in the first place.
I think that is a perfect analogy for how so many of us are living our lives these days. And all that scattered energy, that's the enemy of focus, which is absolutely crucial if we want to achieve anything consistently.
It's like we need to, become masters of prioritization or something, learn to say no to those distractions, even when they seem so tempting in the moment.
Totally. It's all about being intentional with our time and energy. So we've got these three pillars: discipline, consistency, focus. But how do we actually use them? It's one thing to talk about them, but how do we make them into habits? How do we turn them into that system for success we were talking about?
That's the real question, isn't it? Because just knowing about them isn't going to get us very far. We have to put it all into practice. So how do we actually bridge that gap between understanding something and actually doing it?
Well, the guide suggests a pretty practical approach, and it starts with breaking down those big and sometimes kind of scary goals into smaller steps that we can actually manage.
Okay, so instead of saying, I'm going to write a best-selling novel, it's more about saying, I'm going to commit to writing, an hour every morning or something.
Yeah, exactly, because that shifts your focus from this huge, daunting goal to something you can actually control on a daily basis, your actions. It's like that old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And suddenly it doesn't seem quite so overwhelming anymore, right?
I like that. It's such a good point. It's like instead of trying to climb Mount Everest in one go, you break it down into these smaller base camps. And each day, you just focus on reaching that next base camp. And before you know it, you're at the summit.
Exactly. And another crucial piece of this is shifting from that like results obsessed mindset to finding a way to actually enjoy the process itself. It's about learning to appreciate the journey, not just the destination.
So instead of always chasing that dopamine hit of accomplishment, we find ways to be more present in the moment, to like actually enjoy the climb, appreciate the view along the way.
You got it. Because when we're so fixated on that outcome, we often miss out on like the valuable lessons, the growth, the satisfaction that comes from just showing up every day and putting in the work. I mean, think about it. If you're only enjoying the journey because of where you think it's going to take you, what happens when you hit a roadblock? And you're going to hit them.
Yeah, it can be pretty disheartening. It's like hitting that wall when you're running a marathon. You just want to give up.
Exactly. And that's why finding joy in the process itself is so crucial, because it's those moments, those inevitable challenges, they can totally derail us if we're not, if we haven't learned to appreciate the process itself, the grit, the resilience, the ability to learn and adapt along the way. Those are all part of the journey. And honestly, that's often where the real magic happens.
I like that. It's like those unexpected plot twists in a good movie, right? They might throw us off course for a little bit, but they often lead to the most interesting and unexpected outcomes.
Exactly. And that's what makes the entire journey so rewarding. It's about embracing those twists and turns, those unexpected detours, knowing that they're all part of the story.
This is making me think about how much pressure we put on ourselves to like have it all figured out, to achieve these big, crazy goals in the shortest amount of time possible. But the reality is, most people who are considered successful, whether they're athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, they rarely follow this straight, perfect line to success, do they?
Right. It's all about embracing those detours as opportunities for learning and growth. Those are the things we can learn from.
It's about giving ourselves permission to experiment, to fail forward and all that, to find joy in that messy, imperfect process of becoming the best version of ourselves. This has been, I don't know about you, but this has been really eye-opening for me. We started talking about that whole achievement yo-yo thing, like setting a goal, getting super motivated, and then, eventually losing steam and ending up right back where we started.
Yeah, it's such a common cycle.
Totally. And we realized that the key to actually breaking free from that cycle isn't about becoming some sort of like goal-crushing robot, but it's more about shifting our perspective from the destination to the journey itself.
Exactly. It's about enjoying the ride, not just focusing on the finish line.
And embracing those three pillars we keep coming back to: discipline, consistency, focus, and figuring out how to actually make them a part of our lives, not just like ideas we talk about.
Right, like actually putting them into practice.
Exactly. And as we've been talking about, it's not about being perfect all the time. It's more about finding that balance between pushing ourselves and also like giving ourselves a little grace along the way. It's recognizing that it's those small, consistent actions, those daily habits that really add up over time.
Absolutely. It's those small steps taken consistently that create the biggest impact in the long run.
So true. So to wrap things up, I wanted to leave our listeners with something they can actually do, something practical to start using all these awesome insights we've been talking about.
Yeah, love that. What do you have in mind?
Well, I think it would be awesome if our listeners could, maybe take a minute to think about an area in their own life where they've experienced this achievement yo-yo. It could be their career, their health, relationships, even just like a personal project they've been putting off.
I love that. Pinpointing that one area where they really want to break free from that cycle.
Exactly. And then once you've figured out what that is, ask yourself, what's one small, doable thing I can do like today, right now, to move a little bit closer to my goal?
It doesn't have to be anything huge or groundbreaking, just a small step.
Totally. And then tomorrow do it again, and then the next day.
Yeah.
Remember, it's all about building that consistency one step at a time. It's about proving to yourself that you can show up even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it.
Because in the end, it's not just about achieving one specific goal. It's about becoming the kind of person who lives a life full of growth and progress and fulfillment.
And that is how we say goodbye to that yo-yo effect for good and actually start reaching our full potential. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive.